start off with the quote, we actually have to set up our defaults. So we're going to go into our defaults and quotes and jobs. And what you're going to start with is your hourly rates. When somebody walks in the door, what is the hourly rate that you're probably going to charge them? Before you know that they are from an insurance company or anything like that, you're just going to do a normal quote. What hourly rate will you actually charge them? And that's what we have written there. The 265, you just write in whatever rate you actually want. With your markup, your percentages and things like that, on your consumables, at the bottom of your quote, what percentages do you want to have come through? And you're setting these up here, your 1% for consumables, 1% for waste, 1% of your small parts, as sundry and small parts are the same thing. It means the same thing. And small parts is 1% of your parts total. Your polishing is panel that you paint. You are charging them 100 Rand.
Okay.
All right. Or you can actually do that if that is ticked, then whatever figure you have written here is a standard figure that comes up no matter how many panels it actually is. If it's unticked, it does it per panel that you have actually done. Now, a lot of people say that when they're polishing, they're not only going to polish panels that they've done, they polish the whole car, so they have the same set rate, because no matter whether it's a small ding or a major ding, it's still the whole car. So they would normally go in, set that to 750, and then they tick that as a standard rate. The next thing that we need to actually set up before we can start doing any quotes is our protocols. Protocols are basically you and a company. Doesn't matter what company. Doesn't have to be an insurance company. It can be any company. It can be Avis down the road, your next door neighbor, or whatever it actually is. You and somebody have actually come to an agreement as to what rates you are actually going to charge them. And that's what we are actually adding on here. So you go to your add a protocol, and you're going to say Avis rent a car. The computer brings through your defaulted rates at this point in time, and you will now change it to whatever you want. You charge them more, but you're charging them for per hour. You're actually only going to charge them 250. Alternate markups, I'm going to leave it at 40, right? But that one I'm going to change to 35. My glass I'm changing to 35. I want that to be 2%. And I want that to be 2%. You just literally go through and you actually set what it is. You also can do whether the discount is to be applied before VAT or after VAT or whatever it actually is. And the excess, when it's done as a percentage, is it done before VAT or after VAT? Your outside contracts, is it looking at your outside contracts when it works out that percentage? We save our record and we've now added on Avis Rent-A-Car. You have also got your painting defaults, where all your different types of paints that you actually have and what you use. People are actually using their water base. So the computer now wants to know of your standard paint rate, what is your per panel price that you're actually going to be charging, and those are the prices that you've actually put in. So you're just going to go to edit and you write in the prices that you want. Right. This is for white or for silver. For your part prices, is white or silver. Red is more expensive than white or silver. When I say that it's a red car, what extra money do I put onto the actual paint? I'm going to add on an additional 750 actually onto the 18 Rand. You can do it by a percentage or you can do it by set rates. And by using this tick box, we have said that it's not a percentage, it is actually the set rate that we want. It is an additional 750 Rand to be added on, not 750% to be added on. So that's how you actually set up your paints. Also with your paints is you can actually choose from your list here, which is exactly that list there, as to which paint is your most common paint that you want. So it will always bring up that rate first when you're adding on your vehicles. Also, if a car is two-tone, it's going to add on an additional 450 Rand onto the paint because you've now got to mask it off and it becomes a little bit more intricate. On your paint price that you put in of this 1850, we are now asking how much of that painting 50 is materials. So there's actually the paint itself, and then there's actually the labor. So we have got one combined figure of 1850, and the computer just wants to know for future breakdowns how much of that 1850, how much of it is material and how much of it is labor. So we have done 35 is actually your material. Okay, so that's your defaults for your quotes. So to do your quoting now, you can either go to your pen, which is your shortcut to actually adding on a quote, or you can go to jobs and quotes, make the print quote, and you go to your add button, and it will take you to the same place as what that pen mark actually does. Now, this is a list of all the quotes that you have actually done. You can browse across on the side here, and you can get further information on the side if you need to. If you're wanting to look something up by VIN number, you click on VIN number, and it now puts your VIN number into order. You don't need to click anywhere, you just start typing, and the computer will look for what you are typing. It writes what you have typed up here so that you can see what you have typed. You do not go in and type up here. We're now going to go into add new quote. Vehicle, we start typing in the vehicle. Has it been in before? And no, my car has not been in before. If it had been, it would have still been up on the side here with the registration number here. Right, so we're going to go to add a new vehicle. You just type in your H for Honda, and now you click on this side because the computer now wants to know that you have finished with your manufacturer and that you're now doing that, and we type in our Civic, a 1.6 Comfort. Paint type, it automatically came up as water base, but obviously we can go in and change it to pearl if we need to. Our paint color, it is a white. Now, we can go in and edit and add on our own paint colors onto this list, but the list that obviously Dr. Smash gives works more with your painting. As Speedo chassis number, we have to type in a chassis number because our defaults say that we have to have a chassis number. Our registration year, if I just type in 19, it automatically makes it 20. The only time we have to type in all 4 digits is the year 2000. Your user defined is 4 extra fields. The user basically defines what it is that they want it to be. And normally the reason for it is a lot of people do SAP cars, police cars. The police cars don't recognize things by their registration number. They recognize it by the internal registration number. So what you would do here is you would actually go to your edit, user defined, we want to edit that one, and we will say SAP registration. And so it now comes up as a SAP registration, and if you write something in here, it will now automatically come up onto the invoice as well. It actually comes, we put it right next to the normal registration number. We've got that user defined coming up there. So those are what the 4 fields are. They can use it as they need to. Whatever you want, you can write it in, and it will come up onto the invoice if they have typed it into user defined one. Right. Your customers, we don't like the fact that there are too many UTIs, because that is saying that they are not checking before they actually are, they're just going in and adding on a new person all the time, instead of checking to see whether UTI is actually already in the system. Right, so what I normally tell people to actually do is you just start here, you just start typing. All right, yes, Borman has been in twice, but it's now not on the, I'm not on the system. I can either choose Michael if he happened to be from my family. So let's go to add a new customer, and we literally are now putting in who the customer actually is. It's either an individual or it's a company. If I click on company, you see how it just changes those details at the top there, but otherwise everything else really stays the same. Right, let's do Borman Christine. I am a Mrs. Right. Actually onto email address. You obviously put that in. Address, you can put that in. Customer notes, blank screen. You have 3 fields at the bottom here. There again, user defined. So you decide what it is that you want. A lot of people like to use ID numbers. So they can change, they can set their own labels. Let's go in and say edit and change that to ID number. And then you can type in whatever the ID number actually is. Right, data information. I want to approve them to actually have an account with the company. I can put in the, if they were a company, I'll put in their VAT number. And that's really all I need to do. Right, I'm not going to click on customer history. Right, okay, so we can use the selected field. Right, do you know what the set registration number to unknown and set vehicle and those 2 buttons are all about? When we first came in, the computer asked us for a registration number. We don't know what the registration number is, so you can set the registration number to unknown. By clicking on that, it just writes in the word unknown here, but it allows you to be able to go back at any stage and to be able to retype in what that registration actually is. Use selected vehicle. When you have come in now, if I typed in 1 hour of panel beating, it comes up with my 265, and with my paint work, it will actually come up as my 1850. We now want to go in and select our correct rate that we wanting to use. So we can go to values to use, and this is the computer has pulled through from the default, it has pulled through all those rates that we actually had. We have now learned that this car is an Avis rent-a-car, so we can now go to our protocol and we select, it's an Avis, and as I click on Avis, just watch it has now changed all of our labor rates to 250, and it has changed our painting rate as well. Okay. You will set your protocol before you start typing up the actual quote itself, so that it knows what values to actually be using. So going back to our line items now, let's delete this line. I use my delete key and it deletes the entire line. So whenever you are in quotes, don't use delete, use backspace. These 3 ways of doing a quote. You can either type, you want a new part, and it is a bonnet, and it now writes up whatever it is. Or you can actually use code, which is a new part is in, and a B is bonnet. And it now writes it up properly, and it puts in your paint and a strip and assemble. But where does it get these figures actually from? That is your red and green car. So the third way of actually doing it is to go to your red and green car. You go to your bonnet. We go up our list and we look for our bonnet. There's our B for bonnet. And I now say edit. That's the code. That's the word that we have written on the actual quote itself. We don't use standard price because every bonnet is different. So you cannot put in a standard price. But if you were doing wheel alignment, you are normally charged the same price for no matter what car it actually is. So those ones you can put in a standard price for. Right. For stripping in the bonnet, you're doing for 2 hours. If you are replacing it, it is 2 hours. If you are repairing it, it will also take you about 2 hours to take off. Cut and weld, and some parts actually need to be cut out first and then welded back on again. That is completely different hours to your panel beating. That's why it comes up as a separate one. So if you have cut and weld, obviously if you're repairing, there is no cut and weld because you're not cutting it out and putting a new one on. If there's any mechanical, and then how much is it for painting? Yeah, so that is where it gets its figures from that you have used that came up at the back here. You do have your add button where you can actually add on your own codes. I'm now just going to go in and do a quote. So I want to replace my bonnet catch. As I double click, the word dropped came up on the side there. And I want my sound pad, double click on that. But my front panel, I am actually going to repair the front panel. And then my right front door, I am going to repair that one. But to get to it, I also need my right front fender, and I'm going to replace that. Right. So I now need an outside contract of my front wheel alignment. So I change that to outside contract and front wheel alignment. I can now close down, and I have got my quote sitting there. All I have done at this point is actually put in the parts that need to be worked on. We have this button at the top here called Optimize. Optimize will now read the actual quote itself that you have done. It can only read it if you have used codes or the red and green. If you have typed in, it doesn't know what you have typed, so it can't read it. What it will do is, the example I always use is a front grille. If you put in that you're replacing the front grille, under your strip and assemble, it will give you half an hour. The computer now reads it and says, but to get to your front grille, you need to actually have done this and that, and taken off your bonnet and your headlamps and this, and so it reads and says, have you done all of those things? No, I haven't. So it will then increase your strip and assemble to an hour and a half to accommodate for those extra bits and pieces that you now need to do. If you have done the bonnet but you haven't done, it would then actually just do it to like an hour. So it just reads and it optimizes your quote as much as it can. Right. If I click on Optimize, watch these figures as I click on Optimize, and you'll see that they did actually increase. The idea behind it is that as the main programmer always used to say, is you can actually get your T-girl to actually go out and do a quote. And as long as she can see the areas that are damaged, she writes it up, the computer will give her a quote that is acceptable to the insurance company. So we now look at this, the computer has optimized it, we have a look at this, we see our total for strip and assemble is 4225. I know I can get away with 4,750. As I type in my new figure here, you watch these figures again, and you'll see that they will change so that it now adds up to that new figure that you've typed. You can go in and change each line if you needed to what you want it to actually be. So you can change it on here, or you can change it down in your totals, but you as an experienced quote can now do your quote. Right, we're wanting to start looking at our prices. So if I click on bonnet, I can go to part price lookup, and the computer is now going to look to see the last time I quoted on a Honda Civic, what was my price. Okay, we've got no price here. Otherwise, it would have actually had come up with a price of what the bonnet actually is. Right, so we don't have any prices in here, so we now need to go in and actually ask for prices from our suppliers. So to do that, we're going to go to utilities. We want to select a supplier. Who is it we're going to be phoning? We're going to be phoning, let's see, Honda Pantan. And then you say print your selected list. Those are the parts that are actually coming up. Right? So we say print our parts. And it now comes up and it asks, it gives them the chassis number, gives them all the details as to what color it is, what type it is, and then they will just fill in their prices and email it back to us. Right, we can put it as a PDF so we can email it out. Right. Right. So that is how you can get your part price requests. But to go back to your question now, we're now waiting. If you're wanting to change any of these at the bottom here, you will see its computer has come through and has told us that we should be asking for 2%. We actually want to do our own user-defined ones first. Okay. So we click on user-defined. And now we can go in and actually change, and the figure will stay there as to what we are supposed to be doing.
Okay, so it's basically a default setting, essentially.
Yeah, it's it's because it is a default of what percentages it is, the computer is just, we have to tell it we want our own figures. Okay. Now, Honda Pantan have now sent us the figures, and we're just typing them in. Please don't quote us. We want to repair the door, so that's about 2 hours.
And
the
wheel alignment is outsourced, obviously, so you also will be waiting for price on that, correct?
No, the front wheel alignment you could have put in the price in under the red and green car, so that it comes up automatically. Right. So we've put in our prices, we wrote them in manually, but this one here, the sound pad, the figure that they gave us is actually a net figure. So this is what we are actually going to be paying for it. Okay. So we now need to mark it up. So we highlight and we just click on retail. It's a net figure. The computer has taken the 25% from our defaults because that's what we've said, our protocol actually. It's from the protocol. We said 25%. You can say yes, and it will mark it up by 25, or you can set your own. Okay. Right, so we say yes, and it has now marked it up by the 25%. It only does one line at a time. You cannot do the entire column. Okay. That is just so that you can decide which ones it is that you actually need to mark up and mark down as you need to. Okay. One of the other things that we do have is our stock button here. Our bonnet, if I go and click on stock, because 5,000 Rand for a bonnet is a bit high, so we want to see if we have a second-hand stock in the second-hand bonnet actually in our storeroom. The stock on hand is generally, as you take a bonnet off of one car, especially if a car is less than 6 months old. If it's less than 6 months old, the insurance company, no matter how small the ding, you have to actually replace. So you now got this bonnet that you've taken off and you put upstairs in your storeroom. It's got a small ding on it, but you put it into Dr. Smash's stock on hand, so that you can keep track that you have this bonnet actually sitting there. And that's what the stock button is actually all about here. So by clicking on this, it now looks to show you all the stock that we have for a Honda. If you did actually have stock, it will be written up on this list, and you can now say, okay, yes, I do have a bonnet, and I can reserve it. You highlight the item, and you'll be able to go into edit it, and you click on the reserve. You'll see if I go to here, you'll just click on. All of this top section here would have been filled in, but we're now going to say reserve it, and it now knows that for this quote number, this item's actually been reserved for it. Right, so that's what your stock button is. So I've now gone through all the buttons across the top. So basically our quote is finished now. If you need to actually add photos, you've got a whole load of photos onto the system. We can go to attach. And if we're going to auto add, right, do you want to manually select? Yes. And we go in and we actually find our photos. Right, so you can now see all your different photos and things along the side here. You select a photo. So you highlight and right click. Highlight and right click the ones that you want.
So that's how it adds it.
Yep.
So the one, okay.
Yeah, so you just highlight the photo you want to, and you do a left click, so that you can actually just print the selected photos, add a text line if you want. I want 6 on a page. Right. And it now comes up with all your photos actually on it. Right, here again, you can do it as a PDF and you can send it off. Photos don't have to only be photos. You can also, like if there was an Autodex for this particular quote or whatever, or at a later stage, any paperwork that actually comes through, you can scan it and add it onto your photo, so that at any stage you can go back and check it, and it's all attached to a quote. You don't have to go looking on your directories and that type of thing as to where did you put it. It's all here. Computer knows where you actually put it. Also, while we were here, let's go back to our utilities. You're talking to the client and you promised the client a couple of things. It's a great thing that quoters like to do is, if you give me the job, I will fix boot for you free of charge, because I see you've got a scratch here at the back, or anything like that they're actually wanting to say. So because the client actually only comes back in about a week to maybe 2 weeks later, they've actually forgotten those little things that they've told the client that they would do. So that is where we go to our utilities, and we can go to our add button, and it will now keep track of those little things that we've actually asked. Now, there are 3 types of comments that you can actually have. The top one is, as it says, you want it to print on the quote and on the job card, and that would be your query or suspension. You have looked at this car, but you're not happy with the suspension. You haven't quoted on the suspension because you haven't stripped the car, so you can't see it. So you want the customer, the assessor, and the workshop all to know that they must check out the suspension when they actually have a look, and the customer must know that you're not happy with the suspension, so it could be an extra cost actually at the end of the day. So that's the top one. The second one is you only want it to print out on the job card. It's not going to print out on the quote. So the assessor won't see it. The customer won't see it because it's not written out on his quote. But the workshop will see it. So it's for one of those, is if you give me the job, I will fix for you free of charge.
Okay.
So you would now, at the bottom here, you'd write up your comment, fix boot lid, paint run, or whatever it actually is. You write up whatever the message actually is. Right, the third comment is don't print anywhere. It's more of an internal note that you are now writing up. Something to the effect of the boot lid is being done free of charge. Only the person invoicing needs to know. The workshop don't need to know that it was free of charge. They've just been told to do it. And only the invoicing lady now needs to know not to charge for it.
Okay.
So that's what your third option would actually be. Right. The other thing that you can do is a customer can give you I need to have my car by a certain date. And you can now say, yes, we will try, and you put in that date that you told the customer, and she wants it by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And you can write in why she is going to JHB on and you click on OK. So those are the three things. By doing this, by putting in this, when you make the job card, it will actually come up and tell you that you have a schedule, and it will schedule it to that date and time. So it will remind you. And some other niceties that Dr. Smash actually has is it will read your quote for you at this point in time, and it will calculate how long it thinks it's going to take for this job to actually be done. In this case, it's 11 days, 11.9 days, so it's actually 12 days. But in our default, we have said add an extra day on. So that if somebody does ask and we look and we say it's going to take us about 13 days, 13 working days, you've actually given yourself an extra day to actually do it. So, and you can show that time actually on your quote, so write it up that it's going to take 13 working days. Okay, and that is literally your quoting side of things. If you're wanting to actually change any of these figures, you just go through and change it. Obviously, you cannot change your spares, because if you change your spares, it will only change that top figure, and it won't actually do it across all of them. So if you are looking for mechanical, that want to come through with a figure, what you'll need to do is under your strip, you type in your M, and mechanical will now come up, and you'll now do your 2 hours, and mechanical has now come through onto here. Right. Frame and chassis, look at our menu, and we want a line. Effect, and I want chassis work, right, and so we're not in frame, and it now comes up with your framework. Right, okay, so that's how you get your frames to actually come through. Okay. Your quota is pulled through whoever it is that's logged on. But what I generally tell people is they must change this to whoever did the driveway quote, because that person's name is actually now going to come up onto the quote. And if it's your name and you haven't even seen the car, you're just typing it up for somebody, the customer is going to turn around and want to talk to you, and you know nothing about it.
Meanwhile, he's gone and...
Yeah, so rather let them go straight to Duan and when they phone in. Right, control number, blank space for them to be able to write in whatever they want. A lot of people still use the manual quote books, and those manual quote books have numbers, so they write in the manual number there, so that they can then keep track as to this number, this quote is for that particular quote. Once you have finished with your quote, you can do one of two things. You can save it, and when we go in, it now comes up and it says, I'm still making the quote. It means that I have not finished this quote. I am still working on it. If I go in and I have now finished with it, I am happy with it, and I go to my commit button, it says that no changes may be made to the original quote. You can still do your changes, your assess changes and things like that, but your original quote will not be able to be changed. Right, so we just say yes, and we can now print out the actual quote. Right, you see how Dwayne's name now comes up, and your quote is actually now there for them to have a look at. I'll just make our job, put it into a PDF, right, and it is now permitted our quote. It is now turned into an agreed cost because we are now waiting for the assessor to actually come in and assess it, or Avis to say go ahead and do whatever you want.
So like we don't commit the quote until the assessor comes, because you've got to change things. Am I correct in saying that?
Right, okay. Yes, you are correct. When the assessor comes, we do have to make changes. We do commit the original quote.
Okay.
Because what you want at the end of the day is, if you go to this one here, made a job, you will see that you can actually end up with 3 different quotes. What you originally quoted the client, so you can see that. Then you can see this is what the assessor's changes he actually asked for.
Okay.
And then the third one was a good job card. What did you actually end up doing to the actual job at the end of the day?
Okay.
So you end up with 3. So that if you end up in a court case, or
safety net,
it's your safety net to say, yes, I quoted on the bonnet, it was on my original quote, the assessor took it off and said, no, you don't need to.
Okay.
It's not my fault. Speak to the assessor. And a lot of people, a lot of our clients don't commit. They get very worried about that word, which is why I highlighted it. No changes may be made. So they just leave it there, and then when the assessor comes in, they go in still on the making quote, and they now do the assessor's changes. So they never ever have the original, and they have no proof that this is what they actually originally quoted themselves.
And it's there for that. So.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it's there for. Now, if the assessor does come in, we obviously just double click, and literally whatever changes the assessor has told us to do. And replace always means an agent part, OEM. If I now want to do an alternate part, I just do A, and of course he's now only given us 2,000 Rand to do that. There's no way we're getting 8 hours to repair that. He's only going to give us 3. Strip and assemble, we never got away with our 4/7, but he's only going to give us 4/3. So you're literally just doing whatever changes he has actually asked for. This line here, he doesn't want at all, because it's got nothing to do with our quote. And then from here, you go up to authorization, and you literally are now filling in the assessor's details. Here is he is Santan. Right, a private assessing company. He works for LD, and let's say I want private assessor, I want Leonard. Right, my instructions, my claim number, right, and whatever my claim number is, excess, if you know what it is, write it up, but this screen here, fill in as much as they give you at the time. They don't always give you everything because they don't always know everything. Insurance clerks, you don't normally know that because it's only when it goes back that somebody's now starts working on that particular job, because it hasn't been assigned to anybody as yet on the insurance side. So, but you would literally just go to the browsing side and actually select who it is. The excesses and things like that, they don't always know at that point, but you can come back at a later stage. Now, sometimes if you came in and the screen was all zeros, you wouldn't know if it was because somebody hadn't done their job or if it is supposed to be zero. So that is what this tick box up the top here is actually all about. Advised that no excess is to be applied. You tick on that and it now tells you that that is supposed to all be zeros. Right. This one here, our quoted total, that is what do our line items actually add up to. Then this advised total is when Leonard goes back. He goes back to his office. He writes up the quote the way that he wants, and he will come to it might come to a different figure to you. 99% of the time, they should be exactly the same. But there is that 1% of the time where, for some reason, he has got a different figure and you cannot find out where it actually is or anything like that. So you always write in his figure here, so that, because that is the figure the computer will always use. Okay. It's his figure. It doesn't care what your line items actually say. It wants to know what he say it should actually be. So whenever you're making an invoice and that type of thing, that's where it gets its information from. Okay. Right. Once you've done that, so when it comes to assessing, all you're doing is changing the line item so it balances to what he has now said. And then you go to your authorization and filling in the screen. Once you have done that, you've now done his changes. You click on your quick job and it makes it into a job. Then click on print quick job, and it should, do you want to move to, yes, it is a current job. Right, remember I said we will try, set it for that date, so it's actually set up our due date for that time. Right. It is so we automatically schedule it. We can actually change that and say, right, okay, I'm going to start with 1 o'clock in the afternoon to give myself an extra hour. You can change that if you need to, but then you just say, okay, and it now makes the actual job card and everything for you. Okay. Right, so our job card is at the bottom here with our 3 different quotes actually on it now that we can have a look at.